Hi, I'm William Softke, mad scientist. Here in my laboratory, we're going to be measuring the sound and the frequencies of light that you didn't know had frequencies, some of which are bad for you. So here, we're looking at and listening to a special high-frequency light detector. That's that funny black box, which was special made for me by Max Hensey in Wyoming. And it's connected to a speaker, which is the sound coming out of the back wall here, and also to an oscilloscope up here, which shows the wiggles back and forth of the Edison bulb. The light detector is looking at this lamp up here, a halogen, which is just like an Edison bulb, except a bit brighter. It's a glowing coil. It's just glowing. It's not doing any LED weirdness. It's kind of like Mother Nature with electricity. And that's a good old school light, and that's why we see the 60 cycles per second wiggling back and forth on the oscilloscope. This is a sound and an appearance and a kind of vibration which humankind has lived with for a couple generations. Now, down here on the spectrum analyzer, we can see that if I set the stop frequency at about 1 kilohertz, then we can see those same waves down there. That big fat bump over there is at 60 cycles per second, and then the next bump is 120, and the next is 180, and so forth. So what you see on the top trace, the wiggling back and forth, is exactly the same thing you see down here. But as engineers say, this is in the frequency domain, and this is in the time domain. This lower gadget, by the way, is a Hewlett Packard spectrum analyzer from 1978, one of the best scientific instruments ever made, and it does its calculations in true analog linear electronic form. It doesn't chop them into pieces first with all the rounding errors that has. So that's literally the best analysis you could have of this kind of wavefront. If this were all that were going on, if the only thing we had to worry about in light, like this Edison bulb up here, this wonderful spiral coil, same thing we're measuring, if that's all we had to worry about, then I wouldn't really have much to show you. Right here, I'll show the other kind of spectrum. This is a light spectrum. So as I press this button, it's going to retake a light spectrum. Come on, guy, retake. There it goes, go, think, and back comes the same thing. That is the spectrum, a tiny little bit of blue, a whole bunch of orange and red, and a lot of infrared that your eyes can't even see, but it's most of the power. That's why these are energy inefficient. But now we're going to change something. We're going to add a new source of light, a little headlamp. You can see, ooh, interesting there. This little thing. Now what kind of spectrum does it have? I'm going to put it over here, and you can see I'm blocking the sound from the other lamp and retake it. So now we're just looking at the LED. Look at that. It's got a giant sharp's tooth of blue and ultraviolet, way more even than the peak of the green of regular sunlight. So this is one of the problems with these little LED lights. They have far too much blue, which is terribly bad for your circadian rhythms, your sense of anxiety, your night vision, and all kinds of things. But now off with that. We don't need anymore our little spectrum thing, because we're going back to listening to what this awful thing does. So I've got this little LED thing, and as we hear, if I move it in on that, now look at the oscilloscope while I put it in. Now just look at those screens for a bit. You can see something's up. Some weird something or other is going on. Well, give me a sec. I'm going to speed this thing up. And now let's see if we can make a little more sense of it. Look at that. There's some other things you can do with this light. You can change the dimming function. So if you turn it off, but turn it back on, there we are, again. Weird, at the brightest, it stops. Dim, medium, bright, dim, medium, bright, off. That's some really interesting stuff. In later episodes, we're going to go into more detail of what each of these light sources does, what car headlights do, what sunlight does, and what commercial lights like you might have in your house are doing. We can analyze all of them with these instruments and come to some pretty scary conclusions. Thanks for now. Take care.